Hey everyone, it's George Couros with a solo episode of my. No, it's not mindset. It's just the Innovator's mindset, but just a shout out to Mindset Monday. If you do listen to it, I haven't done a solo podcast in a while, and I was doing a Mindset Monday, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought, I want to do this once in a while. I like just kind of sitting, talking, sharing my feelings, and just kind of seeing where my mind goes. And the topic that I wanted to talk about, I've really been thinking a lot about lately. And I think the reason I'm thinking about it is because you hear not in education, but all over about the great resignation, people quitting their jobs and leaving, right? And I I've been thinking a lot about it, not trying to like say like, hey, stay in education, things like that. I'm kind of the idea is that if you're not happy, then you have to go. And that's not just in education, that's in many aspects, right? And there's always a risk with this, right? And I think people are kind of scared of the risk. And I'm not saying I'm encouraging people to quit their jobs, by the way, but I'm just saying to maybe as I talk and share some ideas to kind of think about the process, think about that idea and think about what it looks like. And ultimately, what are you looking for and what makes you happy? And I kind of go back to my own career and really the risks that I was willing to take. And I've defined risk before because I think when we talk about risk, we think about it like isn't something inherently dangerous. But I define risk as simply this: moving from a comfortable average in pursuit of an unknown better. And I think a lot of people associate risk because it's not like it's pretty easy to like move away from something that makes you absolutely miserable. And I think it's way harder to move something away from something that's like, all right, whatever. And I think is that kind of a life we want to lead, right? Is that what we want to do? And I think I've been thinking about this because I saw something on TikTok and I cannot find it. I hate this because I do this all the time. I see something, I think it's really good, and then I scroll and scroll. I'm like, where was that? I'll never find it again. It's lost in the algorithm. But it says something along the lines of this is that there's only one person in the world, or two people, sorry, there's only two people. Now I'm wrecking it. The TikTok was way better. There's only two people in your life that you need to make proud of you. It's not your mom, it's not your dad, it's not your kids, it's not your spouse. It's the 8-year-old version of you and the 80-year-old version of you. If you can make those two people proud, you lived a good life. And that hit me. That really hit me. And I started thinking about like what does that look like? What is the 8-year-old version of me? What would that 8-year-old George want? And honestly, he would want me to take risks, try some things, live a full life, go to NBA games, which I've done, go to WrestleMania, which I haven't, but at some point I'm going to WrestleMania. But just kind of live a life full of passion and then find those things that you wanted to do as a kid. Like think about bucket list items that you had and are you checking them off? And once you're checking them off, are you adding new ones? Are you finding those things that, make you passionate about life, that you enjoy? And then I think about the 80-year-old George and what he would want. And he would want me to live a life that has left a legacy, that I've, contributed to the world, that, people, hopefully the majority of people I've connected with have left better than, when I first met them. Hopefully, right? I'd be lying if I'd say that's for everybody, right? That I've met. That would be a lie. And I don't think anybody has done that. Maybe. But the reality of it is I want to do something that I'm passionate about, leave my mark on the world. And I was actually talking to someone that I work with quite a bit who I try to mentor, and he's in photography. He does a little videography. He's such a talented person. And I talked to him. I said, look, when you think about this, think about like, I know you love this, but is it that you're really good at photography or are you really good at storytelling? Like if someone wanted, for you to do their wedding, would you say like, oh, I take really incredible pictures, or I could tell you, I could help you tell a really incredible story of that day? And think about the difference between what I just said. One is just kind of a mechanical thing and like, here's a skill, but one is like, one people see themselves in the picture. And I think really kind of thinking about how you are an incredible storyteller is the way that you need to really kind of think about not only how you market yourself, but really what you're creating and what you're doing, and really thinking about that impact that you have. And I've been thinking a lot about this, right? And, when we work with our authors and the publishing company, one of the things that I'll say to them is that, um, I know this is kind of eerie, but like, I want you to write a book that, when you pass away, you are able to say, I wrote that book. That's something I'm really proud of. And I know is going to have an impact in the world. That it's not going to be just something that is like a 1 year phenomenon, but like it's something that you hope your, kids and grandkids will pick up one day and look at. And thinking about that and leaving that legacy, and that legacy that the 80-year-old George would want left means taking some risks. And I think a lot about in my career. I remember at one stage of my life, and I've talked about this so often, that I was really unhappy, not just with where I was living, but my job. I did not like it. I did not feel fulfilled. And I wasn't miserable, but I was like, right? I was just like, meh. And that's how I was. And by the way, meh comes from the Simpsons monkey. Just for that's where I think it originally comes from. I have no idea, but that's where that's where I think that comes from. Just side note, side story, little pop-up video fact for you. So I don't know if anyone remembers pop-up video. I think it was like a Canadian show. So probably 90% of you have no idea what I'm talking about. Anyways, was I miserable? Not at first, but I was just kind of like there. And then the more I was just there, the more I became miserable. It wasn't that I worked for bad people or they weren't mistreating me or anything like that. I just wasn't happy. And so I think a lot about that time. And then I just basically said, look, at the end of the year, I can't be here. I cannot be here. And even if that means leaving an education, I'm out. I gotta go. And I committed to that. And I think a lot of times when we think, about the risks that we take, we think about what can we lose from this? If we walk away from this opportunity, if we walk away from this thing, what are we going to lose from this? But I don't think we think enough. And I certainly wasn't. We don't think about what could I gain? If I walk away from this, what could I act? How could this make my life better? And what could I gain from this? And I think a lot of times we talk about regret, we talk about things that we did. But if you look back on your life and you think about opportunities that you didn't take advantage of, I guarantee you'd find a lot of regret there. And I would love to say I jump on every opportunity. I talk to every person that I wanted to talk to, but I've done it a lot. I've jumped on opportunities. I've learned over the years that it's always great to ask the question, even when it's most likely you're going to get a no, just to kind of put yourself out there and share those ideas, because you just never know what possibly good thing could happen. So as I'm kind of talking through this and sharing, I think about some of the risks that I was willing to take to move away from things that weren't not necessarily making me miserable, but weren't making me happy, that weren't bringing joy to my life each day. And I don't necessarily think that every job in the world like every kid should follow their passion. I think that when we talk about career, I think, some people, a job is what they make money with, and that's it. And everything else in their life is what brings them joy. And that's awesome. If that's what gets them up in the day, that's great. I love that. But I know there's sometimes that I think back on when I think back on me taking that risk, that I didn't know if I'd ever be in education. I just knew that if I stayed, I would hate it. I would hate what I was doing. And so I took that risk. And recently I was speaking at a conference, and I'm going to tell you, getting up on stage and doing a keynote, I love it. I honestly remember watching, somebody do it when I was, a teacher and speaking. I'm like, I'd like to do that one day. But Never really thought about it. Like, I just like that looks cool. And that was it. It was basically all that happened out of that thought. And I remember being in that keynote and doing this, and I almost felt like I had this out of body experience. And I just kind of looked and I just kind of looked. I'm like, you're crushing this. This is like so good. You are just doing such a good job. I just felt like everything, my timing was really good. The audience was really excited about what I was sharing. I could just feel the energy. And it was like I was giving energy to the audience. The audience was giving energy back to me. And for me, there was just no better feeling than in that moment to feel I am like doing something that I am truly meant to do. I just feel it. I just feel this emotion right now. And there are so many things that I did, and I still do to get to that point. The way that I go and study speakers, the way that I watch, like, I still watch videos of like, TED Talks and, Jim Valvano. I watch Jim Valvano's videos a million times. I just love the way he delivers things because I don't see it as just something I do. I see it as an art form, and I want to just make that art as meaningful as possible. The connections I made, the stuff that I read, the way that I write about stuff that I eventually talk about, and the reason I write about it is so I can kind of like dive through it in my mind. The reason I do some of these podcasts is so I can kind of dig into ideas and I can just kind of like work through my ideas so that when they get to a place where I'm presenting them on a stage, they're just really refined and thought out. So there are a million things that I could point to that I do to have got to that point where I feel this is just something I love doing. This is just where I'm meant to be. And I'll tell you, there's just literally no better feeling than that. And not only that this is where I'm meant to be, but I'm good at this. Like I'm really good at this and I love it. And I'm proud of that. And I know that sometimes, some of you might be, oh, he's just bragging out. Yeah, I am bragging. I've worked really hard to do this. And I think that if you're offended that I'm proud of something, then are you offended when kids are proud of something they do? We encourage kids to, be proud of when they know they've done something right. I don't think I'm better than anyone or anything like that. What I do think is I found something that I love that I just feel I'm really good at. And I just love. And we should want that not only for kids but for adults too, right? That people find that, because I feel when you surround yourself with passionate people, guess what happens? You become passionate. And as I'm talking through this, as I said, there are so many things I did to get to that position, to get to that point. I could talk about them and I've shared them over the years. But I also think that there are a lot of things that I maybe didn't just like work on, but things I walked away from. If I would have never committed to I'm leaving this job at the end of the year, that I am not happy here and I do not want, and maybe I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but now I look back at that and I was thinking like, hey, 80-year-old George would not be impressed right now that you're just kind of just floating through the day or you're miserable through that job. So I think about that and that there is a risk. There is a risk that we can lose something always when we walk away from some of these opportunities. But I also think you can weigh like what can I lose? But I think what we don't think about enough, and I think maybe I'm thinking about that more, is like what could I gain if I walk away from something, if I'm uncomfortable, if I'm not happy here, if I find myself that I'm in a space where I'm not happy, then yeah, like I can think about all the things I can lose, but if I make a different decision, what could I gain? And there's always going to be risks there. So, as people are talking about quitting their jobs, as people are walking away from this, I'm not saying quit your job. People are talking about that. I understand. And it's, I've seen a lot of things say, like, hey, this is not about burnout. This is about being demoralized. I get that too. And I think sometimes people only learn when people en masse leave positions. And again, I am not encouraging that. I don't want this to be like Georgia telling everyone to quit. That's not it at all. It's a very individual podcast. And what I mean by that is that every person is going to take this different where they're at in their lives. But thinking about that risk idea, moving from a comfortable average in pursuit of an unknown better. And I think part of it is saying, like, not what could go wrong, but what could go right. if I walk away from this, if I, maybe move, to a different place, maybe if I, go pursue that job, maybe if I go back to school and pursue a different thing, what could go right? And what would that look like? I think thinking about that, uh, it's scary. It is scary. I, I'm going through some of that stuff myself right now. It's scary. But I think what's scarier to me is that 80-year-old version of George going, you should have took that chance. You should have done that. And if you are passionate about what you do and the things in your life, I find that 80-year-old version of you is probably going to be a lot more proud, because that passion is what leaves legacy, right? Is what keeps people remembering your impact. And it could be in anything that you do. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'm just babbling now, maybe. I don't know. But I just wanted to kind of talk through this. And I just hope that in my musings and my processing of kind of thinking about that 8-year-old and 80-year-old version of myself, I think I've done a lot of things for that 8-year-old to be excited about. But I'm thinking a lot about that 8-year-old lately and what he'd be proud of. And so I love that. And I hope that that's helped somebody going that's maybe making a tough decision right now, because I know tough decisions, they're scary. They're really scary. But I think, like I said, probably scarier to stay in the same place in many cases. And we don't think about that enough. If we stay 10 years from now, and I always ask this question, what will 10-year George think? 10 years from now, will he see this a good decision? That's how I make a lot of decisions lately. And I think when I'm thinking about that 10 years, 10 years becomes 20, becomes 30, and then boom, 80-year-old George. So that's just what I want to share with you today. And wherever you are in the world, wherever you are listening to this, I hope that whatever you're going through, this might have helped you in a little way. It might not, and maybe it's just for me, but I always do my best, because I want to kind of share my thinking, some things I'm going through, some things I'm struggling with, and I just hope that somebody somewhere finds benefit of this. Thanks for all you do. Take care.